Okay, we'll start with Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sangham Namasami. It's always so nice to start with the homage to the Buddha. I'm going to share the screen for, let's see here, Cessation of Suffering. So it's kind of been a whirlwind month of topics that I've put together. And this theme is so rich that, and I wanted to end it with the sutta with Dhammadinna. And that one is so rich that I think we'll just give that one also a whole week next week when Asesaviraganirodho gets back. So we'll go through some of these shorter suttas, maybe a little bit more slowly. So cessation of suffering. I think I'm just going to guess that most of us came to really dedicating to practice with this in mind, the cessation of suffering. We didn't come just for the social crowd or, the cool poetry. There may be those things, but the reason for the practice for most of us, the attraction was this possibility of the cessation of suffering. So you'll find this repeated throughout the Pali Canon. What is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering? Katamanca bhikkhave dukkharinodham ariyasaccam. And then the answer is, it's the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over, giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not clinging to it. Ya tassayeva tanhaya asesaviraganirodho cago patinissaggo mutti analayo. And this is a good sequence to memorize and really do embodiment practice with. Get to the point where you're really seeing, oh, okay, this is what clinging, craving feels like. And this is what it feels like to set it aside. So I made a table, and I'll share that document again as one last blog entry for July. The words virago, nirodho, cago, patinissaggo, mutti, analayo. Virago. So we'll do more detail on these later. I'll actually pull up the dictionary ones. But just to give a picture of it, it's the fading away. And I think of it as like when we dye our robes, the dye is in there, and sometimes you have to rinse away the extra dye. And sometimes you use something called a stripper. It strips out the old dye so that you're starting with a more neutral colored cloth. And so raga is the coloration, the dye. It's literal, a literal translation would be dye. So it's like rinsing away the dye. I wring it out, I rinse it away. Nirodho is the ceasing. I'm pressing it out. Cago, relinquishing. I don't put it back in the dye pot. I don't take up more. Patinissaggo, letting loose. I pour away the water that's collected the dye. Mutti, freeing. I release that. Analayo, unattachment. And then you don't land again back in the dye pot. So this is just, I've got another analogy, and I know there are many, many teachers out there with lots of analogies for this, and you'll eventually, kind of find your own similes for this sequence. So I'm just introducing this sequence before we get into the suttas. Ready for the suttas? Okay. We're going to look at least the first two of these, the Samyutta Nikaya 2222, called the burden, and Samyutta Nikaya 22-103, the sides. And we might begin Majjhima Nikaya 44, which in the Chula Vedaliya Sutta, the shorter classifications, which is when a layman Visakha talks to the Bhikkhuni Dhammadinna. So we'll start with the burden. And the summary of the sutta is the aggregates are the burden, and a person, our sense of self, carries that burden. Craving is the taking up of the burden, and letting go puts down the burden. So here's the sutta. At Savatthi, there the Blessed One said this: I will teach you the burden, the carrier of the burden, the taking up of the burden, and the laying down of the burden. Listen to that. And the Pali is Baranchavo bhikkhave de se sami Baraharancha, Baradanancha, Baranikipanancha. So the word you hear repeated throughout that, the Barancha, the bara, that's literally the burden, the load. It can also be your task, your responsibility, a difficult matter, something that's burdensome. When we go into monastic life, we typically take dependence on a teacher. And there's this really beautiful passage where the person who's aspiring and wishes to become the disciple, the student of that teacher, Ajtagidani Mayambaro Ahampiteria Baro. So you hear that word again, paro, in there. And it literally means may I be the burden of the teacher, and may the teacher be my burden. And when I did this with my preceptor at Tataloka, I said, well, we can change that word. You can change it to the word responsibility if that feels like a more comfortable term. And I definitely feel like it's useful to do both. But for me, it was like, no, I really understand that this body and that body, the body of my teacher, the personality of myself, the personality of my teacher, these are the burdens we're bearing. And in community, we can bear them together and help each other. So, usually the junior is assisting with like cleaning the room and bringing the tea, and the teacher's dealing with the emotional and mental difficulties of the student. So different ways of helping to hold that. But this is a lot of what we're doing in human form, is dealing with burden. So we haven't gotten into what that means yet. But the Pali, paro, burden or responsibility, or that it's difficult. And then that suffix, hara, is the carrying, the bearing, the holding, or it can be that which can be carried, literally carrying. The next word in there, the suffix after bara, is adana. And that's the taking up or holding. So holding the burden. And then the last one is nikipana. And that's the casting off, the throwing down, the eliminating of the burden. So now we're not, talking about the relationship with another person. We're talking about having come into a human birth. What are these? I'll go back and read the what the Buddha will teach us here. I will teach you the burden, the carrier of the burden, the taking up of the burden, and the laying down of the burden. Listen to that. And what is the burden? It should be said the 5 aggregates subject to clinging. What 5? The form aggregate subject to clinging, the feeling aggregate subject to clinging, the perception aggregate subject to clinging, the volitional formations aggregate subject to clinging, the consciousness aggregate subject to clinging. This is called the burden. If you've done the Thai forest morning chanting, you'll find this repeated out there. And it's really key to note that it's the aggregates subject to clinging. That is the burden. Sure, there is a tangible just physicality that can be burdensome, but what is the real burden we're carrying? It's the aggregates subject to clinging. And what is the carrier of the burden? It should be said, the person. This venerable one of such a name and clan, this is called the carrier of the burden. So our self is what's carrying this burden. You see here name and form, nama rupa, the person and their designation, where they came from and what they're called. What is the taking up of the burden? It is this craving that leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there, that is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. This is called the taking up of the burden. This is that being perturbed, being disturbed, either towards delight or aversion, wanting something, wanting to be someone, or wanting to, just get away from it all. Any of these things, once with that aspect of the craving, the tanhaya, this is the taking up of the burden. And what is the laying down of the burden, which is the focus for this week? It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is called the laying down of the burden. And I'm going to repeat that sentence. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is called the laying down of the burden. And that sentence is what we looked at the very, very beginning, this yo tassayeva, tanhaya, asesaviraganirodho, cago, patinissaggo, mutti, analayo. That is what this sentence that I will repeat one more time here is about. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is called the laying down of the burden. This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said this. The 5 aggregates are truly burdens. The burden carrier is the person. Taking up the burden is suffering in the world. Laying down the burden is blissful. Having laid the heavy burden down without taking up another, having drawn out craving with its root, one is free from hunger, fully quenched. One is free from hunger, fully quenched. And this is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. I just made a few tiny little tweaks, and it just basically, I took out the word bhikkhu so that it's applicable, because it truly is applicable to anyone who has the aggregates, which I think all of us on this Zoom and in person do. So the next sutta, we're going to get into basically the sides of how to unpack and work with this burden that we're carrying. But first, are there any questions or comments, concerns around, do you have the sense that we are moving through? I'm not saying there's not joy and happiness and, good companions and many delights in the world, but that even there is this burden that we're carrying. Is that familiar to? I'm getting a head nod in the room. Yeah, and online. So, yeah. Is this sutta too heavy? I was feeling after a number of weeks, it would be actually really good to get to the meat of the matter. Why are we here? I find this sutta uplifting. You?
Yeah, we need to hear it.
We need to hear it. Okay. All right. Shall we keep going? We should keep going. Okay, the next sutta. What are we carrying and what do we do about it? And the suttas, the title's translated as the sides. It's in the Samyutta Nikaya 22-103. So the aggregates considered in light of the Four Noble Truths, phrased as portions or sides. The previous sutta version, I took Bhikkhu Bodhi, and this one is going to be Bhikkhu Sujato. So you'll see a little bit different languaging. Next week, we'll go probably more so into the languaging around a couple of these words. This at least, because different words strike people, different translations strike people differently, and one of them might really resonate for you in your practice. So before we were just getting the message from the Buddha that it's the five aggregates that are the burden, we're the ones carrying it, and that putting it down would be blissful. And now we're going to get a little more information about that process. Here's the text. At Savatthi, there are these four sides. What for? The side of substantial reality, the side of the origin of substantial reality, the side of the cessation of substantial reality, and the side of the practice that leads to the cessation of substantial reality. That last one is Sakkaya Yanto, Sakkaya Samudayanto, Sakkaya Nirodhanto, Sakkaya Nirodhagamini Patipadanato Nanto. Maybe if you've recited the Four Noble Truths, you'll see them embedded in here. But the word we really want to focus on right now is the Sakkaya. Bhikkhu Sujato is translating it here as substantial reality. I think that's good in some ways, and it's not my favorite. I actually, I think it's Ananda Jodi Bhikkhu who translates it as embodiment. I also like to think of it as personality. This is our personality. What is the origin of personality, the cessation of personality? Maybe that sounds scary, but it's actually super freeing. There's stories of more than one, but I've heard it in regards to Ajahn Chah, where he would be sitting under his kuti and just almost just blank, just, abiding peacefully, but not with really any affect or show on his, no body language that was displaying anything at all. And then someone would walk up, bow to and ask a question, or, come to do a chore or something. And he would just put the personality on, because that's how we relate in the world. It's an appropriate tool for interacting with each other. But here, Ajahn Chah could put it on for the display and proper interaction so communication could happen, but not take it seriously. And when it was just alone, could rest in the absence of personality. Just imagine that. It's not like blank robot program not running. It is a deep, abiding freedom, peacefulness. And that's what this is about. So I like to use personality, but we're going to keep substantial reality here. Next week I'll have more lists of how this one is translated by different translators, because I think it's a really good word to play with in yourself. It's like, what is it that I'm constructing, and what is it I need to put down? So we've got the side of substantial reality, the side of the origin of substantial reality, the side of the cessation of substantial reality, and the side of the practice that leads to the cessation of substantial reality. Some of you might in your mind have already jumped ahead to what that might be. We'll go step by step. What is the side of substantial reality or personality embodiment? It should be said the 5 grasping aggregates. So that's what we were told in the previous sutta, that's the burden we're bearing. What 5? That is the grasping aggregates of form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness. This is called the side of substantial reality. And what is the side of the origin of substantial reality? It's the craving that leads to future lives, mixed up with relishing and greed, taking pleasure wherever it lands. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving to continue existence, and craving to end existence. This is called the side of the origin of substantial reality. That's where we get, and I like the way you translate, it's where we get mixed up with the relishing and the greed and the taking pleasure. Mixed up, where we start to think of it as this is me and mine, and my right to have, and the pursuit of happiness is why I'm here. I mean, it is. That's how we got into this whole samsara thing. But is it something that we want to put down as our motto of, and I will continue to exist by striving after this, that, and the other pleasure? So that's the origin of the substantial reality. And what is the side of the cessation of substantial reality? Again, it's the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over. Giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not clinging to it. Yo tassayeva, tanhaya, asesaviraganirodho, cago, patinissaggo, mutti, analayo. It's the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over. Giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not clinging to it. It's so, there's a sutta I love about, this fathom-long body, and it's right here where there is suffering, and it's right here where there's the ending of suffering. And that's not the ending of life, that's the ending of this sakaya, this substantial reality. That's where I find it difficult with that translation, is because it's not like the body disappears as elements and processes happening, but that sense of it being mine and a personality attached to it that goes away right here. We don't need to go to Burma or Antarctica. It's right here. We don't need to go to space, the depths of the ocean. It's right here. This is called the side of the cessation of substantial reality. And what is the side of the practice that leads to the cessation of substantial reality? So, and I mean, it's on the screen. I was going to say any guesses, but it's the Eightfold Path. It's simply, and I like that word in there too, it's simply the Noble Eightfold Path. That is right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion. This is called the side of the practice that leads to the cessation of substantial reality. These are the four sides. So the algorithm for awakening is pretty straightforward. It's sama, pretty aligned, pretty right. Sama diti, sama. You've got that prefix in the front of each one of these. Here is being translated as right. This alignment. It's right here. The algorithm for awakening. It's a process. It's something that really takes a depth of exploration, a depth of embodiment, a depth of clearly seeing. And with that clearly seeing, the letting go happens. Now, letting go is the inevitable result of practicing the Eightfold Path. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to that phrase again, and we'll look at the dictionary definitions for the words that are that ending, that release, the relief. I know I'm using a lot of the Pali today, but these are ones that it's like if I repeat it enough, maybe the phrase will begin to stick, and you'll have that same sense that I have of that, of just the poetry, the flow, the freedom, that the scent on the wind of the Dhamma. Yo tassayeva tanhaya asesaviraganirodho cago patinissaggo mutti analayo. So viraga, it's the absence of raga, dispassionateness, indifference towards, disgust. So it can have that negative connotation as well. Nibbida. You've got this sense of, ew, why am I attaching to the hat? So it's a destruction of the passions, waning, fading away, cleansing, purifying, emancipation, and arahantship. So a beautiful goal. And this is, that's why I say, this is, as Alex was saying, it's good to hear this, but it's not where you start. That's why we had in July 4 weeks before this, to warm you up to loving yourself and understanding what opinions and discord was, and then living in community. And now here we are with, those are kind of like the building blocks that help support you as you go into this really important teaching. The absence of raga, and that's the word that I don't have the definition here specifically, but that's the coloration, the dyeing. Like if you have an undyed cloth, it's just the pure spun cotton color, and then you dip it in a mud puddle, or you dip it in you spill your beet juice on it, then suddenly you've got beet red there. So this is the absence of that coloration to personality, coloration towards being and selfing. Nirodha. So again, these words often can get picked up in Buddhism, it's all about suffering. It's all about freedom. But when you look at the words, the definitions of them can have that negative, it's hard to translate it into English. We just don't have the concept. So Nirodha could actually be translated as oppression or suppression or destruction. But what we're ceasing, what's being annihilated is this consciousness of being in general, the sankhara. So this is not, when I realized that gluten was not good for this body, it caused distress in the body. Before that time, I would see that bakery box with croissants in it, and my mouth would begin to water, and the buttery richness of the layers and flakes. And, yes, I had an eating disorder. But that was just, you don't have to have the draw to croissants. I think, that might be a universal thing. That draw, cut off, gone, when I realized that gluten was so harmful for this body. I couldn't process it. That same thing can be laying on the counter now. It's as if there's a box of rat poison. There's just no attachment. What was cut off was the sense of craving and being and having, and it's like that. One teacher described it, awakening, as you look at reality and you go, "Ew, I was clinging to that," because you really see and understand the nature of it. And there is this sense of ew, but then the putting down of it, there's this very freeing, joyful, the other side of that. So although these words can sound quite negative, what we're putting down is the playthings that really weren't leading to anywhere wholesome. So the next one is cago, abandoning, giving up, and renunciation. So we're renouncing the things that we thought were bringing us joy and happiness, and then we're finding a very different happiness as a result. Patinissaggo. Let's see, where's the forsaking, giving up, rejection. So again, sounding like a negative word, renunciation. But this is the turning away from. And the root from there, nisajjati, it's to let loose. So I let loose, or I pour out. This is where I put it in the die analogy. I pour out, hand over, give up those things that really were just tying me up in samsara. Mutti is that release, and it's also the freedom. I would translate mutti as freedom or emancipation. And then analayo. This one was a hard one, and asesaviraganirodho really helped me with this word, because it translates as aversion, doing away, but it's the freedom from attachment. That's what it is. And then she pointed out to me that the root of that word, I've got it in here, alaya, it literally means a roosting place. So the bird comes and roosts. It's the settling place. And so it's like you now are just able to soar and have no need to land. There's no need to roost anymore. So that's the way that this word really unpacks well, is that image of I need not go roost again. Okay. And then in the notes, you'll see this table where so one thing I do want to talk about is reading the suttas here. We're doing a sutta study, but I was talking to someone yesterday about when you're reading the suttas, it's like it can be very good to read a little bit and then sit with it, feel it, taste it, know it, see how it shifts your actual experience. The words. So the words are not just an intellectual thing. It's viscerally experienced. And there can be an exploration that, of course, you might have a line of questioning. We've got a line of questioning in these suttas. So there may be a line of questioning, but the knowing of it is a very visceral, embodied experience. And it's the body of the, I'm going to say this and hope it makes sense. It's the body of the mind. So it's the freedom of the mind, but we know it from this experience that we're having here. That's where the releasing is happening. So in this table, I've got I.B. Horner, Venerable Bodhi, Venerable Sudaso, Venerable Ananda Jodi, Venerable Sujato, and then Suvijana is in my translations, the Pali, and an analogy. So Suvijana called it virago, fading away. I liked through dispassion. Nirodho, we picked cessation and ceasing. Cago, we picked giving up and relinquishing. Patinissaggo, renouncing, letting loose. Mutti, freedom, releasing. Analayo, without a roost, non-adherence, non-reliance. And I had another analogy. Let's see, I think some of you here have done some hiking or camping. The virago is it's like soaking in a hot spring. The way that it just fades, the tension just fades. The nirodho is like resting in a hammock. It just cease. Cago is like lightening a backpack. You take the backpack off. Patinissaggo is like letting go of a tarp caught in the wind. It just I think Kema might have been one of the people that helped me with a very windswept tarp, if I'm remembering right. But back at Alokavahara, it's that sensation of it's just I'm letting it go. I'm not going to try and wrestle this tarp to the ground anymore. Mutti is resting under the starry sky. And analayo is walking without a burden, without a care in the world. This last month, I've been using these pictures from, I wrote to this artist and asked if I could use his pictures. And I just feel like he's got a kind of a sense of what we're looking at here. And I do want to say that he wrote me this morning, and his wife is having some real health difficulties, and there's a financial struggle for paying the medical bills, and it's just bringing that in as the kind of burdens that we're holding. So supporting his work is a matter of supporting the burden of another. But the way that his images just embody that sense of both the grieving and the letting go, and so I think that whether or not you're Buddhist, I mean, I don't know if this artist is or not, you get that sense that we do touch in. Everyone touches into this in tiny ways. It's just when we hone our mindfulness within the Eightfold Path that we really get the taste that allows us to then really want to go through the process of understanding and releasing and relinquishing and letting go. Do you want to make comments here or not? Okay. Let's see, time. I'm going to bring in another Pali phrase that just completely enlivened my practice. It appeared at the beginning of some of you might be familiar with the Nibbana sermons. It's a absolutely wonderful 33 sermons given in Sri Lanka on the topic of Nibbana. At the beginning of every one of them, excuse me, and there's also a series of lectures given by Bhante Analayo that are superb, the recordings of that, where he intersperses his comments and the parallels. And this is where I was explaining to someone that I would read it, I would listen to the original, the Sri Lankan bhikkhu who originally gave them was speaking in Sinhala, and then he translated them to English himself. So you know that the translation is really getting at what he meant it to get at. And then there's an audio recording of him in both languages, but I don't know Sinhala, an audio recording of him reading it in English. So I would sit on the cushion and listen to him reading it. And so that would be another way that I could engage with the suttas. And then I would watch Bhante Analayo's lecture while having the text in front of me and taking notes. And we did like one a week. And every week I would engage with the text at least 4 times, most often 5 or 6 times. And that's the way that it became a part of my practice. And then every single one of the 33 sermons starts with this verse, which appears many times in the canon. Etang santang etang panitang yadidang saba sankarasmato sabu patinissaggo tanhaya viraganirodho nibbana. And the way that this bhikkhu Nyanananda, I'm sorry that I really should have looked up his name again. This is peaceful. This is excellent. Namely, the stilling of all preparations, the relinquishment of all assets, the destruction of craving, detachment, cessation, extinction. And an alternate translation from Bhikkhu Bodhi. This is peaceful. This is sublime. Namely, the calming of all constructions, the letting go of all supports, the extinguishing of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. And I wrote that Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation onto a piece of paper and stuck it right on kind of a mat on my altar. So, which when I was out at Alokabhara in the yurt, every morning when I'd go to bow to the Buddha, it would be right there. This is peaceful. This is sublime. Namely, the calming of all constructions, the letting go of all supports, the extinguishing of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. And I would suggest, as I did, I would take one of these phrases and maybe spend a month. What does it mean? The calming of all, like Suchita has been talking about koans from the Zen tradition. And this can be kind of that. The calming of all constructions? What am I calming? The calming of all constructions. Or a real difficult one for me that really helps unravel a great number of things. The letting go of all supports. Wow, that sounds scary. But then as you really, really sit with it, the letting go of all supports, the extinguishing of craving, spend at least a month with that one. Dispassion, cessation, nibbana. Yeah. Actually spend a year with the extinguishing of craving. That one's a really, really good one. Okay. I'm not going to jump into the sutta with Dhammadinna at this moment. Do you have an additional comment? I was going to read your comment here from before. But should I read it first?
Related this?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, Ayasuchita made a comment just about the whole embodiment practice this month. But I feel like, especially in the last line, she started, when we're able to see the true nature of the human body. So here I'm going to substitute the aggregates. When we're able to see the true nature of the aggregates, we can feel gratitude for being alive, cultivate humility, and gain the wisdom to face and understand our circumstances clearly. This wisdom steadies the mind, allowing us to enjoy a calm and peaceful daily life. Well, this is the, like initial real world application. And then eventually that peaceful daily life, when we're all arahants, this is exactly like the totality of that experience. And to live in a way that moves us away from the suffering found in everyday existence. And then eventually at the arahantship, that's the complete laying down of that suffering, so that all of our movements are with wisdom and with compassion. So I think I don't need to go through that next one. So I would like to open it up, and then next week we can look at this additional sutta of with Dhammadinna, because I was just going to go through the first part of it, which again reiterates the practice within the Four Noble Truth, and the Visakha is basically asking about substantial reality again. And so we'll delve more into that next week. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing. Right.
I was giving you some comment.
Yes, please.
This is the last part. So should you just reading this? I tried to send him, but I couldn't.
Oh, okay. I can read this bold part.
Yeah.
Oh, the whole thing.
Two whole things.
All right.
Today.
So Suchita looked at the text, the suttas we were going to do today, and wrote this out. So she's just asking me to read it. Thus we say that birth itself is the beginning of suffering. However, since we have already been born, we strive to lead our lives on the right path so that we may end this life without regrets and avoid continuing a painful existence in future lives. This is why we practice. When we attain what we had been craving, the joy is very brief, and soon we begin to crave something else again. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So I'd like to open it up. We've got about 10 minutes for comments, questions, concerns, this burden, this letting go, and really the path, the exploration that leads us to awakening. Change it to gallery view here.
Another visitors this morning.
Oh yes, we had deer going by looking in, not just on the upper part. Didn't come right to the door this time,
Yeah,
but
when she reading sutra.
Yeah, when I was reading. It's always so lovely to share it. How is the burden for you? What are your questions or movements of your heart? Have you tasted that sense of when the crave, and it can actually be the experience of, I don't know, the perfect cup of tea. I know it's going to be the perfect cup of tea, and that swallow, there is a release of the suffering. There really is, so the Buddha talks about when to know it, you need to also understand the gratification. And so you can start to experience what is the ending of craving by satisfying the craving. And then as Suchita wrote, notice how short-lived that is. But notice that when you're really thirsty and you have that drink of water or lemonade or whatever it is, there's a relief and the body goes, So that's a thing we have to keep doing over and over and over and over and over and over again, to have those moments of quenching. What is it to fully allow? But have you had those experiences then? Yeah.
Yes, but this is we need, our body need.
Mm-hmm.
But the sensual pleasure is different. even if we get the from something very make us happy and released from the sensual pleasure, but it is not helping anymore.
Yep.
Not for the leaving my body, staying for a life.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So we just cessation for the looking that what is this real craving is. Mm-hmm. So watching that carefully.
Yeah, so these are why I use those kind of analogies of the, the hot pool or the hammock or that's not the ultimate. That is not the ultimate release. But I went on a retreat. I was up in the mountains in Colorado, beautiful red rocks everywhere, and I would go find a rock and I would sit and I would have my back straight and da 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 da. And the teacher of the retreat said, you need hammock meditation. You need tree meditation. Go find a tree and put your back against it. Feel the tree. Go get in the hammock and look up at the stars at night. Let that be the holding of your meditation, because she could see that I had this rigidity about my practice. Now, in some ways, I maybe have gone too far the other way. There is a middle way. But for many of us from this culture, we've held the rigidity so much that it's really valid. That on that same retreat, it was difficult to sleep. It was hot, and and the bugs were so loud and all of that. So I had that kind, and sharing a room with 5 people or something. And so I'd leave after dark and I'd cross the street where there were no street lamps and make sure that I wasn't seeing any snakes. It was, cool enough that the snakes weren't out. And I'd lay down in the grass and I'd just melt onto the earth and look up at the sky. And it's a taste. You begin to taste, what is it like to let go? What is it like to release? But then you can set up an addiction and a craving to that kind of thing. So that's not our goal, to find the ultimate campground and lay down under the stars. But some of us are forgetful of that there even is a possibility of release. So start wherever you are and then say, oh, this tastes good enough. I'm willing to walk the difficult Eightfold Path for a real relief, a real release. I don't know if people listen to Aya Suchita's interview where she talks about 13 years of walking up the mountain, visiting the animals, and the animals visiting you, and beginning to get the taste of that, and then the wisdom that comes from it. So that's what we're doing. Is I was talking about it as the Satipatthana practice. Anything you want to close with on that?
I think I already gave it to the result of my feeling.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen that Saturday at Clear Mountain, maybe we could ask Mutti to link it in the notes for this program too, so that people can have another real world experience of how this is walked. Welcome for any comments. Otherwise, we'll move to the homage to the Buddha. All right, should we do our hum?
Ara
Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi
Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
So I'll stop the recording, and if anyone wants to talk afterwards, welcome to do so.